Welcome back to episode 115 of the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. My name is Josh. As always, I'm here with Troy. What's going on, Troy?
Not a whole lot. They're ripping out my yard. They're putting fiber or gigabit internet in our neighborhoods. So I apologize if you hear any beeping sounds or large equipment outside my house making a bunch of noise. But I'm excited to get it in, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, fast internet will be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm all for it. A fast upload will be even
There we
better.
go.
That's what I'm excited about.
More videos coming from us, I guess. Well, kind of a big show today. It's sort of the change in the season, right? We're into September. It feels like summer's over. And for us, it's officially the start of our 2023-24 NHL season and hobby preview series, where starting today and through the next, really, including today's episode, I guess, the next 10 episodes, we're going to be previewing the season, previewing the, from a hobby perspective, of course, and should lead us up right to the start of right before the start of the first game. So feels kind of weird where all the summer big picture stuff is kind of over now, Troy, and we're going to start really digging into this upcoming season. So I'm pretty excited about that. We also have a kind of a cool update on our website at hockeycardsgongshow.com. We have a guest blog, a gentleman named Mark Miller, who's a longtime collector and writer from the Baltimore, Maryland area, wrote a fantastic piece about really planning for the future of your collection. It is definitely worth the read and really gets you thinking a little bit too about all of us that have now spent a number of years amassing a collection. Most of us probably have at least a little bit of value into I guess that we've amassed, and he gives us a lot of stuff to think about as to kind of plan for the future and eventually how that collection might change hands someday. So thank you very, very much to Mark. He is a fantastic writer. And it's, like I said, it's a great piece. So be sure to check it out on our website, hockeycardsgongshow.com. Did you read it, Troy?
I have not read it yet. And just to let everyone know, if you don't see it right away, you got to scroll down a little bit to see our blog post.
Oh, yeah. More towards the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Last thing before we get started is just a reminder that the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast is a Patreon podcast, which means that we rely on support mainly from listeners like you to help us cover our show expenses. Believe it or not, this train wreck of a show does cost money to operate. It helps us to produce more and hopefully better hockey card content and fun initiatives, even in a small way, to grow the hockey hobby. So it's really easy to support us. You can just go to our Patreon, where we have a couple of tiers. Starts at $5 a month. You can join our $199 support level tier. You'll forever have that title, be one of the first 199 supporters of our show. In addition to helping us out, you get access to our Gong Show Discord server, where you can chat with us and, well, I don't know, 120, 30, 40, 50 other people in there right now on a daily basis. Get some insider access to our show. You can participate in our upcoming 5K challenge, which we're going to, I believe, early next week, get the entries out for that. Maybe win a box of the cup if you're good at picking cards. And for the 2023-24 season, we have a fantasy hockey league starting soon. So it's just a lot of fun, a lot of great conversation around hockey cards every day. It's very easy to support us. All you got to do is you could go to our website, hockeycardsgongshow.com, and click on the Become a Patron link at the top of the page. Or you go to the Patreon website at patreon.com and search for Hockey Cards Gong Show. There's a link in our show description for whatever podcast app you're listening to us on, or if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a link there. And then finally, in our Instagram and TikTok profiles, there's a link in our link tree there too. All right, Troy, that was a lot. You ready for the game plan?
I am ready for the game plan. On today's show, we begin with the greatest NHL player to wear number 15. Then we are off to the start of our 2023-24 NHL preview series. And our first segment, we are looking at guys to buy for love, not money. I feel like that should be a movie title. Feels like for a good movie title. Then it's off to hobby news, followed by new product releases. Next, we have our PWCC Weekly Auction Hockey Card Preview segment. And we end the show with personal pickups. All right, Josh, we are on episode 115. So the greatest NHL player to wear number 15, per the Hockey Writer's greatest NHL player to wear each number article, is Milt Schmidt. Josh, did you know Milt Schmidt?
No idea. Okay, Troy, so cue all the social media messages that say, you idiots don't know who Milt Schmidt is?
Yeah, I actually, I don't even think I've heard of him until I read about him. Then I felt embarrassed and that I should have heard of him. This guy is amazing. Runners up at number 15 in the article were Eric Nestorenko, is what I'm going to go with, Jim Nielsen, and John McClane. John McClane's I think it's McClane, but then I just keep thinking about Die Hard.
Oh,
I'd be reading the name wrong, but it's Maclean.
okay. Before you get into Milt, I just want to say one more thing about us not knowing anything. Is feel free to message us all you want and be baffled that we don't know somebody. But what I might say too at this point is, especially if you've listened to our show for a little bit, understand that part of our whole, I guess, shtick here is that we don't know anything and we're learning. And so it is kind of funny to me when people are still surprised that we haven't heard of someone.
Yeah, you can still message us because I like learning. I like seeing some of this stuff.
I do too.
Keep it coming. All right, Milt Schmidt, overview. He's a setter and sometimes defenseman from Kitchener, Ontario. Schmidt's rights were acquired by the Boston Bruins in 1935, and Schmidt would make his NHL debut at the Bruins in 1937.
Oh, do you think he got the Shane Wright treatment? Did he have to sit in the press box for 2 years or what?
I don't know if they even had press boxes back then. You probably had to sit outside cold. Schmidt played in 776 regular season NHL games over a 16-season NHL career. Now, here's a cool one. Schmidt played his entire career with the Boston Bruins, and as we will hear, he is a Boston Bruins legend. So I feel embarrassed. I should have known about this guy because I do know a little bit about the history of the game. All right, for his awards and accomplishments, he is a Hall of Famer, 2-time Stanley Cup winner as a player. That will become important later on. 1-time Hart Trophy winner, 1-time NHL scoring champion in 1940, 3-time NHL first All-Star team selection, 1-time NHL second All-Star team selection, 4-time NHL All-Star game selection, named one of the 100 greatest NHL players by NHL.com, and his number 15 is retired by the Boston Bruins. All right, Josh, over his regular season career, he had 229 goals, 346 assists for 575 points. Schmidt made the playoffs in 13 of the 16 NHL seasons, compiling 24 goals, 25 assists for 49 points in 86 NHL playoff games played. Schmidt scored 30 or more points in 12 of his 16 seasons, which, remember, they did not play 82 games a season like they do now. Of those 12 seasons, he had 2 seasons of 50 or more points and 2 seasons of 60 or more points. And the games he played were all over the place, but, it could have been like 30 to 50 or 55, 60, somewhere in there. But there was no way they played 82 games. So just remember when I read those stats off. Best season of his NHL career from a point standpoint was his 1946-47 season, where Schmidt had 27 goals, 35 assists for 62 points in 59 games played. So I had to read about Schmidt because I never watched him play or anything, but Schmidt was an unselfish player who had hustle, grit, and a pass first, shoot second mentality. However, Schmidt was a prolific goal scorer in his own right. He was one of the toughest guys in the league during his playing days. Lots of commentary around that or articles I found, but just how great a teammate he was. He was always setting up players, but he could score if he needed to. Schmidt took a 3-year hiatus during his career to serve in World War II, which caused him to miss 3 full NHL seasons.
A lot of respect there.
Yeah. Actually, I don't say this, but if you want to read about it, go look at the ceremony. I believe the Bruins played the Montreal Canadiens the day before they were getting shipped out. It's him and 2 of his line mates actually all joined the war effort for Canada. And they actually play the game, and then they have a huge ceremony at the end. It's kind of surreal to think about that happening nowadays, but it's pretty cool to read about. So if you
I was just thinking that same thing. Can you imagine like Austin Matthews going and serving in the Marines or something like that?
Yeah.
Would they make him shave his mustache, do you think?
Oh, you'd have to, right? And that flow, you'd have to get rid of it. All right. Milt Schmidt retired halfway through the 1954-55 season. Josh, now instead of retiring and spending his days fishing, guess what Schmidt did? Next day, he immediately took over the head coaching duty for the Boston Bruins. So he retires, and now he's the head coach.
Well, I don't think you were set for life, though.
No.
When you retired, you needed a job. So
no, not back then. Yeah. They paved every player now should be very grateful for all the old players that paved the way and took the lumps. Schmidt coached the Bruins through the end of the 64-65 season. He then went on to become the Bruins general manager and would go on and lead the Bruins to 2 Stanley Cups as a GM. His biggest trade as a GM was a blockbuster deal where the Bruins acquired Phil Esposito, Ken Hodge, and Fred Stanfield from the Blackhawks in exchange for Pitt Martin, Gilles Marat, and Jack Norris. And Josh, he also helped sign a guy. I don't know who he is. Bobby Orr. I think he was pretty good. I don't know.
Never heard of him.
You tell me. Pretty good D-man, Bobby Orr, that he helped sign. Good. In 1973, Schmidt would be named the first GM of the Washington Capitals. However, that first season was rough as the Capitals went 8-67-5, managing just 21 points. And if I remember right, that still might be a record for futility in a season. So I guess not very good, but hey, take our lumps. After his front office career, Schmidt worked for the Bruins as an ambassador and leading their alumni club for many years. Schmidt. I combined his name, but I combined the last name with the first name. Milt Schmidt passed away on January 4th, 2017 at the age of 98. Now, this could have been a fun fact if I just put it here. Schmidt was a player, executive, or an ambassador for 80 plus years in the NHL.
Wow.
He was tied to the NHL in some capacity for 80 plus years. That's
awesome.
Fascinating. All right. Fun, interesting facts. We got a ton. I love this. I loved researching this guy. Nickname, Milty.
Makes sense.
Yep. I think everyone could have got that one. Why did he wear number 15? Well, I found an interview where he said, that's the number the Bruins gave me, and he was happy to have it. Seems like the right mentality for those guys, playing in the 30s and 40s. Just give me whatever. I'll be fine with it. At the time of his retirement, Schmidt was 4th in NHL history in points scored and 3rd in assists. Schmidt was the last active NHL player who played during the 1930s. Thought that was pretty cool. He was also the last living player from the AHL's inaugural season. Schmidt was the first former player to win a Stanley Cup with the same franchise as a player and a general manager. This achievement has also been achieved by Serge Savard in 1986 and Joe Sakic in 2022. When Schmidt was 20 years old, Josh, he was invited by the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team to try out for their club. However, Schmidt declined because he said he was a way better hockey player. He knew he could hit home runs, but would strike out a lot more. And the funny thing is, in today's game, strikeouts aren't that big of a deal anymore. It's if you put the ball out and score runs, that's what they need. So it's kind of funny.
Schmidt was made for Moneyball, huh?
Yeah. He sounded like he was just an athletic stud. He one of those guys that can do any sport, and he was like All-American, I don't know what do they call it, All-Canadian. He was really good at it. All right, Schmidt was a member of the Kraut line, which was a trio of Boston Bruin hockey players who played on the same NHL forward line. Center was Milt Schmidt, left wing Woody Dumart, and right winger Bobby Bauer. And if you've heard that name, you might have heard of Bauer Equipment. I think that was started by his father-in-law, but it's got the Bauer name. The Kraut line name was devised by Albert Leduc, a player for the Montreal Canadiens, while the trio were playing for a Boston farm club in 1936. Initially called the Sauerkraut line, the nickname was shortened later to the Kraut line. This referenced the German descent of all 3 players, all who grew up in Kitchener, Ontario, where they played for the Kitchener Green Shirts.
What color were their uniforms, do you
think? They better be green. The trio played almost 1,900 NHL games with the Boston Bruins, but put their careers on hold during World War II to serve the Royal Canadian Air Force. They were one of the most dominant lines of any era, having finished 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in scoring during the 1939-40 season, a feat repeated only twice by the 1944-45 punch line and the 49-50 production line.
So his whole line served in World War II.
Yeah, they had that ceremony. Wow. They were all going off to war, and they had the big ceremony, and both teams gave him salutes and everything. It's wild.
That's amazing. That is super cool.
It's super cool. Bobby Orr considers Milt Schmidt to be the greatest Boston Bruin of all time. He is, last stat, only Bruin to have his name on the cup 4 times. 2 as a player, 2 as a GM. That was a lot of information on Milt Schmidt. So let's look at his rookie card.
Well, I just want to say quickly, Troy, that this is the gift to us for doing this show.
Yeah, for sure.
Is we get to learn about amazing players who are really a part of the bedrock of the NHL.
Yep, for sure. All right, Josh, you have to check out this card. 1940, 41 OPC rookie card. I think this is this the set? I can't remember. The V301-2. All right, so there's the front of the card, and Josh, here's the black back. Blank back, baby. So
OPC blank back.
Yep, and I think blank backs are like a throwback to the old days when they had blank backs, and sometimes those were by mistake, and sometimes they were on purpose. All right, so his rookie card, PSA only has 22 graded copies of this card ever, with the highest being a PSA 8. The most recent sale of any PSA graded copy of this card I could find was a PSA 2 that sold on June 15th of 2022 for $798.88 US. BGS only has 2 graded copies of this card ever, with the highest being a BGS 7.5. I could not find any sales, obviously, because there are only 2 of them. And while it is not a rookie card, and I didn't bring up the picture, which I should have, Schmidt does have a 1951 Parkhurst card. So I think a lot of people are familiar with that. That card has a 314 PSA graded copies. Highest is a PSA 9. The last sale of that card I could find was on August 2nd of 2022 via PWCC for $3,000 US. So there we go. Milt Schmidt. Fantastic player. Awesome read.
Good job, Troy. Another one. We only got a few left. We're really going to have to figure something out here.
Eventually. 24 is we started with. Chelios, I think.
Yeah, I think so. All right, you ready to get going and roll up our sleeves and start digging into the new season and our 2023-24 hobby preview? So today, like we said, is the official start of our 10-part series, and it'll take us right up to the start of the season. We've kind of, for once, mapped something out and have a game plan. We figured out the topics we wanted to cover. The hardest part, though, is trying to figure out where to start. And ultimately, we thought we'd kick off our previews with guys that are really super tempting to invest in and tempting for us too. But in our opinions, though, have maybe a lower percentage chance of either having that hobby breakthrough moment or are kind of at the stage of their career where maybe they are what they are as a player and might not have as much upside moving forward. So it's really our list of goods and really goods, but guys that will never be great or ascend to the upper reaches of the hobby. So as we put it, these are guys that you buy for love, but maybe not for money. So there's a bunch of things, I guess, before we get into the names, which might be controversial, Troy. We'll see. But if we wanted to make this exercise super simple, we would have just said, don't buy goalies or defensemen. And our show would be over. But
who should everyone direct their hate mail to? Do you want to take that?
We need to come up with a producer, like a fake one that is never on air and that we can create an email address for, and
he'll take all the hate mail.
Yeah. So we're going to stick our necks out a little bit. We're going to challenge ourselves to come up with some names, but want to give a number of reminders and stuff to think about first as you're typing your hate mail messages to us. First of all, we do this sort of thing not to give buy-seller advice. These are opinions that are hopefully logical, thought-based, and research, but they're just opinions. We can and will be wrong. And really our goal with any kind of list or tips or ideas or rankings is to give you some ideas to think about so you can make your own decisions on what cards you want to buy, regardless of your goal, if it's for PC or investing or both. And then, Troy, and I think this is really important, by putting these guys on our list, it doesn't mean that they don't have value, that they haven't had value, or that they can or won't become the next huge hobby star. It just means that if you got into this player today, that maybe we don't see a lot of upside down the road. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, think about it this way. I love everyone. I love all the players, but there's some guys I don't think are gonna get on the cusp and be a hobby superstar. And I put a couple down, and I'm gonna have my reasons, and I'm sure some people will disagree, but that's what it is. It's all good conversation, good debate.
Well, and the reality is the hobby is really fickle
Yep.
as far as who has a lot of value and who ultimately has a lot of value down the road. One of the things we talk about on our show almost every week are guys that were legendary players that played, whether it be in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just astonished have no value, right?
Yep.
And so if there's like 20 or 25 players in the NHL right now that you could talk yourself to getting excited about, we all know that 10 years from now, that 4 will still have kind
Yep.
of real value and real chase. And that means naturally 20 of these guys will kind of fade into a little bit of the hobby obscurity that we find, like a Matt Sundin and
Yep.
or a Doug Gilmore or Wendell Clark. I don't know why I'm mentioning all Maple Leafs here, but you get the picture. Dale Howarchuk, right? There we could go on and on about guys that just don't seem to have the chase that you would think, given what the impact that they had on their team or on the league, or what they produced. Steven Stamkos, right, is another. So yeah, so we thought, well, let's start in, you know, put it out there that these are guys that, as tempting as they are, maybe don't buy into their cards thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to buy a card for $1,000 and sell it for $5,000 5 years from now. I guess that's kind of the point. So don't get offended if your guy makes it on our list. We think debate is good, like Troy mentioned, and any list or rankings are going to be subjective. And if you do disagree, message us and let us know
Yep.
why. And we'd love to have kind of a fun dialogue with you. Last couple things are we're picking current players as, again, it's part of our preview series. We could have a whole nother episode going looking back at maybe guys from the 80s that you might love to have in your PC, but probably aren't great from the quote unquote investment perspective. With all that said, Troy, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
We're gonna let you go first.
So I said I love everyone. Maybe that's why I put this guy on, because I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Ooh,
shots fired. All right. My first guy, Kevin Fiala. All right, Josh, we've dealt with Fiala. We know about Fiala in the wild, and I sum up Fiala like this. Fiala is going to do Fiala things. That's how I think about him all the time. He'll look really good for stretches, then take a step back, whether it be injury or for some reason, it really seems like he isn't interested at times. And I never understood it, and I've never heard really talk about it. But again, I might be a little bit biased being from Minnesota and how his time here kind of went. It also seems when I watched him, it usually takes him like 25 to 30 games to really find his stride, which I think hurts him because he really kills momentum for the beginning of the seasons. And it's like he's always playing catch up. It just seems like something that kind of follows him along. The thing about Fiala, though, super skilled. And actually, last season was the second highest point total he's ever had at 72. It was a step back from 85 points he had in 21-22 with the Wild. I believe he was with us.
Yeah, that was with us.
Yep. So he's definitely super skilled, but he just seems to not be able to put it together to reach that next level. It always seems he falls, a 50 to 60, 70, 80 point range and just can't get to that breakout level. And while he had 33 goals in his last season for the Wild, again, that took us kind of a slight step back last year. I didn't remember what it was. I think it was like 25, 27, somewhere in there. Where I really struggle with Fiala is that even if he had a 90-point season, would anyone care? I don't think they would. I don't think the hobby would care that much. He seems like a guy that just kind of flies under the radar. He's in LA, which is a massive market, but it's not a huge hockey market. Plus, just very anecdotally, talking to the West Coast collectors at the Burbank show, no one mentioned Fiala for people what they were looking for of the hockey people there. It was like Zegas, Kopitar, some San Jose Sharks, and a couple, but not really any Kings or Fiala, there was Kings players, but not Fiala. You just don't hear about him a lot in the hobby circles. Plus, Josh, this upcoming season will be his 10th season in the NHL, which that's a pretty long runway to become a hobby superstar. And I don't know if he can get there. And he's now 27 years old, so he's going to start hitting the back end he's already started the back end of the age curve. If you look at like the athletic, but we say you hit your prime about 26, 27, 28. For his career, Fiala's had 355 points in 488 games played. So he's not a point per game producer. And going back to about hobby relevance, how hobby relevant is he? Can he break out? If you look at Card Ladder, year to date, he's only had 663 secondary market sales. That actually surprised me. I thought that was pretty low. And in like August, even though it's the summer, it was something really low. It was like 50 or something like that. So his Young Guns, Josh, is a 2015 PSA 10, has a pop of 175 with a gem rate of 53%. Right now it trades in the 40 to 60 range, and it seems like it might move a little bit out of that, but come back. But with Fiala, I just don't, if he can't get to that 100-point range, I just don't really see, I just see him flying under the radar and not being really hobby relevant. So he's my first guy that I would say kind of buy him for the love that you love Fiala, you love his play, but not as a big money-making scheme.
Well, he's like a really solid second line guy that's going to produce enough points to make you happy, but he'll never be a superstar. I think another thing too that hurts his hobby relevance is he's now, over the 10 years, he's kind of like played, it'll end up probably being like thirds, right? Like a third in Nashville and a third in Minnesota, and then a third, in LA, and who knows where he goes from there. But my point is, it's not like he'll spend 10 years with one team and really ingratiated himself with the fan base either.
Yeah, and with that, that's a great point, because even with that, sometimes I don't think the fan base, like maybe I'm just being biased from Minnesota. I don't know about Nashville or LA, but they just never seem to buy into him. It's kind of that indifference he would show at times. And I don't know if that's just his personality in interviews, but people read a lot into that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first one. All right, Josh, my next one. And this one hurts. Like I hurt putting this guy on here, but I think he's a good candidate for this. So Andrei Kuzmenko. So I can't say his name now. Kuzmenko to me is like the perfect candidate for this segment. You buy him for the love, but not the money. And it's impossible to root against this guy. How could you root against him? Guy makes his NHL debut at 26, has a fantastic year, but then because he's too old and doesn't fit into the rules, he can't even win the Calder Trophy, which if he was eligible, he probably wins it. If they would have let an old guy win, he probably wins it over Beniers.
Right? Beniers had 25 goals, and he had way more goals than Beniers did.
Yep, Kuzmenko had scored 39 goals, had 35 assists for 74 points in 81 games for the dumpster fire that is the Vancouver Canucks. That's pretty impressive right there. Just give him the Calder. I feel bad that he was too old. He also had the most insane shooting percentage I've seen in a long time, 27.3%. You just don't see that. That's crazy. I think if you looked at players with more than like 200 shots and their shooting percentage, he had the highest ever, I think, in a season.
Really?
Something really high, top 5 for sure. It's just crazy. So, I mean, what is not to like about this guy? However, it's exactly most of that would be working against Kuzmenko and why he falls into my buy him for the love, but not the money. He's 27 now. He'll turn 28 during this season. There just isn't a lot of time for him to run up his numbers and get into that elite status or maybe even gain a huge following. It seemed like everything went his way individually last year, and it'll be extremely hard to replicate it, I think. I don't see him replicating a 27.3 shooting percentage. However, I do take a little bit of back with that because he has Elias Pettersson on his line, which helps. And Pettersson had a point on 60% of Kuzmenko's goals. So that's pretty good. But if you get separated from him or he gets injured, there's just I think there's just a lot of stuff that's going to work against Kuzmenko. It'll be extremely hard for him to improve on his raw numbers from last year. Also, he still plays in Vancouver. I don't know if Gordie Howe hat trick leader Rick Tocchet can right that ship. Seems like he's been doing some things. The rebuilding is starting. He's happy with offseason moves that they've made, but it still might be a little rough for the Canucks this year. So again, love Kuzmenko and his story. I just don't see a lot of runway for a long-term value and making a lot of money on him. So his Young Guns, Josh, 2022 PSA 10 has a pop of 182 with that gem rate of 35%. And recent sales have just 85 to 110 US dollar. It's been in that range recently, the last, I don't know, 7 to 10 sales, just kind of hover right in that range. I just think it would be really hard for him to break into the 150 range. Even if he starts out hot, maybe he can get there. And it's got the pop and the gem rate going for it. But I just think with him starting his career so late and just not having a lot of runway and the things that I think will work against him this year, I just don't see him being a great value or investment guy. So looking at Card Ladder, just to give an idea, there was 1,456 sales of Kuzmenko cards year to date. So average it out, it's like 182 a month. Not too exciting, but still a little bit, better obviously than Fiala. But I still think he's just a guy to love. Buy his cards because you love him. You love the story. It's a really great story, but I would not be investing in him long term.
What I think a point to make here too is it doesn't mean like that you can't make a little bit of money maybe flipping him this year. Maybe he gets off to a hot start and his Young Gun spikes and you make a little bit of money there. What we're talking about more is like the long term.
Yeah.
Like 5-10 years from now, is this a guy that's going to command a decent money for his key cards in the hobby? Now, I do have a question about Kuzmenko for you, and it's kind of related, but did you at all think about adding our guy to this list for some of the reasons? Not quite as pronounced though.
I did.
Kuzmenko. I did too. I almost added Kaprizov.
Yep.
And it was sad that I even had to go there. But you got to be honest, right?
Yeah.
That Kaprizov has a lot of the same issues as Kuzmenko.
Yep.
He's 2 years younger, 24 when he came into the league. He scored more. Yeah. So it's not as egregious as a case, but that feels like too strong of a word. I think you get what you mean. But so yeah, I was curious if you thought of Kaprizov.
Oh yeah, I did.
All right, Troy. I feel like I'm going harder than you on my picks. So buckle up, everybody. But
yeah, hate mail goes to Josh on this one. Here we go.
Here's my reasoning.
Let's go.
I have 4 picks.
All right.
And my first guy I got to go with is Nick Suzuki.
Oh, boy. I just heard the whole we're close enough to Canada. I just heard the like pounding on the tables from all of Montreal.
Now, Troy, there is a lot to like and admire, of course, about the youngest captain in Canadians history. He's a young 24 years old, plays in one of the biggest hockey markets and hobby markets in Montreal. So why in the heck would he be on my list for love and not money?
Did you hear that he can't speak French yet? Is that what you heard?
No.
I don't know.
I assume he's fluent by now.
Yeah.
And it is true also that in the 4 years so far, his point production has increased every year, culminating with 26 goals, 40 assists for 66 points in 82 games played last season. So with 291 career games played, he's averaged 0.26 goals per game and 0.72 points per game. So you have to ask yourself, what would this guy have to do to reach the hobby elite and drive real long-term value? You'd have to make a really big jump in production. And he might just be a really good player in an important market, a long-time fixture on the team, a favorite in Montreal, maybe like a Mikko Koivu, maybe a little bit better right here in Minnesota. But does he really have the game, flair, and star power to go much beyond that? Is he going to be a 50-goal scorer and 100-plus point guy that would really command the, that upper echelon and get into that very small group of people that have long-term value in the hobby? I just don't know. It kind of doesn't feel like it at this point. Like, he's a very important part of a good team. I think he'll always have value because of his role in Montreal, the fact he's the youngest captain, that the team has such a big fan base, that there's so many collectors in the hobby. But, so if you buy into $1,000 card today, what would he have to do for that card to be worth a ton of money? And really the only kind of realistic thing I could think of is win a ton of Stanley Cups. Now, they do have some exciting young talent on the team, but I wouldn't say that there's anything that you would point to when looking at the Canadians today that would lead you to think they're going to win 3 or 4 cups in the next 10 years. So I guess that's why I put him on the list. He's a 2019 Young Gun. His PSA 10 is a pop of 916, 43% gem rate. Last sold for $275 on September 2nd. It is down about 16% in the past year and 18% in the past 6 months. 261 cards were sold last month for Nick Suzuki in the secondary markets, according to Card Ladder, and 2,268 so far this year through August. A lot of people have bought into the hype at this point on Suzuki. He's got more than 58 cards sell for more than 1,000 US, and 19 of those 58 sales were since the start of last season. So is this a controversial pick in your mind, or do you think I laid out?
I think this is your most Oh no, you have another one coming up. I think this one's definitely controversial. I mean, I didn't put him on my list. I didn't think of him. I like Suzuki. I mean, you make some good points. I'll give you that. I just think he's poised to be kind of a stud. But again, you got to have everything go right? Caulfield, you got to have your team improve. But yeah, I agree with the cup part. That's actually a pretty good point.
Well, and I go back to the constraints that we're operating under are, we know that from this era, from the guys playing in the league today, 10, 15 years from now, there will be 4, 5, or 6 players that command. So you have to, in order for Suzuki to be one of those that has real true value and that has a lot of financial upside, I just don't see that happening. And again, we're saying buy these guys for love, just not for money. So if you're a big fan of Suzuki, and there's a ton of reason, I think, to be that, then yeah, go ahead, buy his cards all you want. I just wouldn't buy him assuming that you're going to make a ton of money down the road. Okay, the next guy, Troy, that I went with is Dylan Larkin, another captain. Boy, I got my sights set on the captains right now, I guess. He is a 27-year-old captain for your Detroit Red Wings, Troy. Recently, he signed a big deal, I think, to remain with the team as well. He's a guy that you can count on for about 30 goals a year and maybe 70 to 80 points. So it's kind of in that, I'm not saying that Fiala is a better player, because I think Larkin definitely is, but if you're just looking at the numbers and the point production, it's sort of in that Fiala range. And so what we see all the time too in the hobby that's different from the games in the NHL is that all the other things that like a Dylan Larkin does super well don't tend to be super valued by people in the hobby at large. Now, they're probably valued by Detroit Red Wings fans that watch him play all the time, and he'll have a market and a following because of that. But yeah, its game is just really good. It's not great. And I think similar to Fiala, he's at the age where he's right in the middle of his prime years. And so for him to take a huge step forward and double his production seems like that probably isn't a super feasible possibility at this point.
Yeah, I can get by. Larkin's one of those guys where I just don't know much about. I haven't watched him. I know I think he lead the Wings in scoring when he was really right into the league, or one of the youngest guys I think in Wings history to lead him in scoring, if I remember right. Very good player, but like you said, he does things that fans of the team love, but they just don't translate into the hobby. And I agree with you.
And I think it's telling that maybe a guy like you, who we follow the league pretty closely, doesn't know a lot about him, because he's just maybe on that second layer or third layer deep, constantly, never really up at the most visible or top of mind kind of place.
Yeah, just can't watch every game. Got too many minutes hockey games.
He's a 2015 Young Gun. His PSA 10 is a pop of 663, gem rate of 51%. Last sold for 100 US on September 4th. It is down about 22% over the past 6 months, 29% down over the past year. 152 of his cards sold in the secondary markets last month. So again, not a lot. For context there, Wayne Gretzky sells about 3,000 cards a month. So we're obviously way on the other side of the spectrum, but you got the top current guys like, McDavid was, I think, 1,800 last month. You got Crosby, 1,300, Ovechkin, 1,200. So he's about a tenth or an eighth of their card sales. 1,513 cards have sold year to date on the secondary markets, and all-time 12 Dylan Larkin cards have sold for more than 1,000, with 5 of those coming since the start of last season.
I am truly convinced that the pictures on these young guns are not the same people. Look at this. Larkin, young guns. And then Suzuki. That ain't Suzuki. I don't care. That is the game.
Well, they're all like 12
I know.
when they're in their young guns because they come in so late.
I know. All right. Who's next, Josh? This one, I don't even know. I'm going to duck. You say the name and I'm ducking.
Yeah. I can already sense the gasps coming from the other end.
Well, I already showed the picture. So
I thought long and hard, Troy, but I'm going to stick my neck out there and I'm going to go with Mitch Marner.
Wow.
So, hear me out.
All right. Let's hear it.
All right. There's more legendary. I'm going to fall back on this. There's more legendary players and Hall of Fame players, even. I don't know if Marner's a Hall of Famer yet, in this league that don't have major sustained hobby value than do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. An example I'll go back to, we just honored Matt Sundin, who you made the argument is the greatest Maple Leaf ever and barely has a hobby market. Right. We don't do record sales of Matt Sundin cards all the time. And nobody's going to argue that Matt Sundin wasn't great. He was a great player. The greatest 13 ever. But he's not in the Lemieux, Gretzky, Yager, Gordie Howe hobby category, of course, either. So that gets us back to the crux of this whole discussion, which does feel uncomfortable, right, at times, because we're so programmed to believe with all these guys, right? And I think you and I are a very optimistic person. Like, well, we kind of try to justify our way into thinking, well, if this happens, that happens, so on and so forth, that Marner could be a hobby superstar. And, I would say he's a star in today's game. And he's a great player. I would love to have him on the Wild. That's for sure. But when you look at that sustained hobby chase, I think there's really two big things that he is going against him. And that's where I'd say my case for Mitch Marner. First of all, he's in the shadows of Austin Matthews, which is a real thing.
Yep.
Look at Leon Draisaitl, who has historic numbers in both goals and assists, and he can barely get out of the McDavid's shadow. Yeah. I've really even thought, like with my kind of investee hat on, that, man, Draisaitl, trying to outfox the Fox a little bit here. He's scored more goals than anyone in the last 5 years, but ultimately I talked myself out of it because it's like, right, wrong, or indifferent, he is just swallowed up by the sort of McDavid momentum, and it's going to be so hard for him to ever really assert himself out of that shadow. And so if Draisaitl can't seem to do that, how would people expect Matthew or Marner to get out of the Matthews shadow? So that's point one. And then if this kind of is thematic, point two is that I just don't know the list of huge hobby stars that people spend thousands of dollars on their cards that score 30 to 35 goals a year. And that's sort of what Marner does.
Yeah. Yeah, assist machine, right?
He's an assist machine. He's like Panarin in a way, or from a point production standpoint. He just doesn't score a ton of goals. So, I think that will hamper his long-term upside. So if you love him, that's amazing. And a lot to love. Like I said, I would be very, very happy if somehow a guy like him ended up on the Wild. But I just don't know if I would buy, I'll use my example again, of a $2,000 card today and think, this would be a $10,000 card 5 years from now.
Yeah. He would need I think he would need a run on the goals for sure. He would have to hit 40 and then get over that 100-point hump, which was he 98 last year, 97, somewhere
99. I think he had said 299 or 90-point plus seasons, not quite 100. He had an awesome year last year.
Yeah, so I mean, but again, I'll look at it, but it was like 25 goals and 67 assists or something, or what was it?
Something like maybe like 30 goals.
Oh, 30 goals, 69. I looked it up. Yeah, so this is a good one. I get. But
am I crazy in saying this, or
no? I don't think you're not crazy. You got good reasoning behind it. I just think he's that guy that's like right there. I mean, he's on it, but again, he's in the shadow of Matthews, and we've talked about the shadow concept of being the second guy on every team and how it just sometimes doesn't translate, even though how good they are. But maybe if he can take over from Matthews and score 50 goals and 60 assists and get 110 points, but you have to sustain that. I don't think one season would change our outlook on him. But
and I want to make this point too, is that I don't necessarily love this, It doesn't give me joy. It kind of sucks that the people that you can really bank on this hobby is such a small, like if you really want to just purely be in the hobby, not for the love, but only for the money. It's like, well, buy Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews. Maybe even Austin, maybe not. Right.
Yeah.
And that's all you should ever collect. Maybe
throw them in the box.
Throw them in the box. Yep. And that's about the safest way to do it. And so there's a huge risk with all these guys. Now, could Marner be the guy that bucks that trend? Maybe. But it's just given where he's at in his career and kind of the shadow he exists in and the level he's produced, I think at least he merits consideration on this list. Okay, now the last guy. Have I ticked off people in every corner of the universe yet? So we're going on the East Coast here.
Did you talk about Marner?
No, I got to talk about Marner. So Marner's a 2016 Young Gun. His PSA 10 is a pop of 1,284, 61% gem rate. The last sold for $325 US on August 30th. It is down about 23% in the past year, about 9% in the past 6 months. Troy, 200 Marner cards sold in the secondary market in August per card ladder, 2,390 per date. So again, it's like he's like a fifth of the big guys' sales, maybe like a third of, or a little bit less than a third of Austin Matthews. He does have a little bit of a bigger higher end market though. 87 Mitch Marner cards have sold in secondary markets for more than 1,000 US. 31 of those 87 since the start of last season. So people are buying him. Okay, now the last guy.
All right.
Sebastian Aho, the 26-year-old Finnish center from your Carolina Hurricanes, Troy. You have lots of teams. It is the last player on my for love but not money list.
I have lots of teams and I don't watch any of them. It's amazing.
Yeah. He, of course, again, is another really good player on a really good team. So very good team. Just not enough of a point producer, I think, to put him again in that upper tier in the hobby. So he's played 7 seasons in the NHL now. He's got 218 goals, 250 assists for 468 points and 520 games played. So that's 0.42 goals per game and 0.9 points per game. Again, really good, even better, a little bit better on a goals per game than some of these other guys, but just not elite. His top goal season was in 2019-20 when he had 38. And 21-22 was his best point season when he finished with 81. So, like Fiala and Dylan Larkin, right? He's played 7 years now. It's a long sample size. He's in the smack of his prime. I think the odds are that this is who he is, which is really, really good. Like I mentioned, just not a superstar. I'd be pretty happy. Again, we have no centers on our team. So he's a very good player, but yeah, it's okay. Just not probably somebody that's very bankable for the long run. He's a 2016 Young Guns. His PSA 10 popped 750, 52% gem rate. Last sold for $94 US. Down about 57% over the past 2 years and 24% over the past year. Only 113 cards for Sebastian Aho were bought in August in the secondary market, again, per card ladder. Year to date, 1,285 cards sold over the first 8 months. So again, not a big hobby chase. Only 2 cards sold this year for more than 1,000 US, with the highest being 1,244 for a 2016 The Cup Exquisite RPA of 20 PSA 9 that sold on June 28th. So there's more. These are, the guys that just came top of mind for us. So that's our list of guys to definitely buy for love, but maybe pause a little bit if you're buying for money. Any closing thoughts, Troy?
No, I think it's a good exercise to go through. I'm going to write down the date and every player, and then in like 3 years, I'm going to go back and look and just rip on both of us.
For being an idiot, for being wrong. Yeah, maybe.
It could be right, could be wrong.
We'll see. Okay, got to make a mention for Gongshow partner Slab Sharks. Thank them again for their support of our show. The current Troy Slab Sharks weekly eBay auction ends tonight, Thursday night. Some really awesome hockey cards in it, so be sure to head to slabsharks.com for a link to the auction. If you do miss it, it's no big deal. Once one of their weekly auctions ends, the next one begins, so there's always great hockey cards to bid on. And speaking of next week, so I got to be really clear, this is not the auction ending tonight. It's the one next week. Holy moly. did they get a big hockey card in that auction. So Troy, a 2015 Connor McDavid Young Guns BGS 10 Black Label, a huge card. Cannot wait to follow the auction and see what happens on this one. So if you're unaware, the BGS 10 Pristine Black Label is the highest, really technically, I think, graded card in all of sports. Well, I guess SGC has a Pristine too. It is a pop of 35. So it's a perfect card grade according to Beckett. That means all 4 subgrades are 10. There's 505, I guess, quote unquote, regular BGS 10. So that would have at least one 9.5 subgrade with all 10s. As further context too, Troy, there's 8,225 BGS 9.5s with the gem mint designation and a total of 10,970 gem mints between Beckett, PSA, SGC, and CSG. So that's going back to that total pop report. So if you think of like all the gem mint McDavid Young Guns, almost 11,000, this would represent, like, with the pop 35 at the Black Label, the most exclusive from a condition perspective of really any of those cards. Last sale on a McDavid Young Guns BGS 10 Black Label, an all-time high, was last November 22nd, so just about a year ago. It sold for an even $25,000 US dollars. That's a big one. And I do know that you like to bid on Slab Sharks auctions, Troy. So I'm kind of curious what your strategy is going to be on this one. Are you just going to like go for like 30K right out of the gate and assert your dominance, or are you going to try to snipe it at the end?
I would have put $500 and hope it falls. Hopefully everyone forgets about it.
Yeah. Hopefully that there's a technical error where they have to award it to you. And nah, I wouldn't want that for Slab Sharks. But congratulations to them. They're a newer company. I think this is really reflective of the overall work that they've done, the growth that they've had, and really the confidence that collectors have in them. So it's very, very big deal. And why do Canadian hockey card collectors love Slab Sharks eBay consignment services? Well, because they get, number one, lots of hockey card collector eyeballs in their weekly auctions, and they make it super simple to sell your cards on eBay because, well, like we've said a lot, they basically do all the work. So check out slabsharks.com for their eBay consignment services, including payout rates, and to get started listing your cards with them today. Happy news.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, I had thought like long and hard about last episode coming out with this story, but I wanted to approach it in a right way and do it in a way that we could actually maybe add some value to the conversation without just regurgitating everything else. So what I'm alluding to is the whole kind of, I don't even want to say this word because we have kids that listen.
Yeah.
Card Pajorn. Can we just call it that?
Just card PORN fiasco. That's what
Card PORN, or like Fjord, like Card Pajorn fiasco with the alleged fake authentication of a Jordan jersey. It's crazy. I think the story is going to have a lot of legs. I don't want to go into like a ton of detail, like going step through step through the whole backstory, but I'm going to give a 30-second overview just in case somehow somebody's not familiar. So Darren Ravel, the longtime sports business reporter guy, initially broke the story where a Jordan jersey that was thought to be game worn was purchased for something like $26,000 US, but it couldn't be photo matched to a specific game. So it's like the fingerprint that they take of a photo, and they say, okay, he wore these shoes or this jersey in that game. So apparently there's a foundation that was started in the name of a deceased photographer who frequently had photographed Jordan during his playing career, and that tried to submit this photo of him wearing this jersey to prove the provenance that he wore the jersey in an Eastern Conference Finals game, which would really ostensibly take the value from 26,000 to something like north of $1 million.
Yeah.
The problem is that when the reporters like Darren Ravel or his team or whomever contacted the family of this deceased photographer, they said, there's no such foundation that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you think, boy, if your deceased dad had a foundation that you might know about it. And then going through the records, they found out that the foundation was very recently started, ostensibly as a means to get this jersey photo matched and authenticated as being in that Eastern Conference Final Series or game. then it was found out that maybe it was thought that the photo itself was doctored, where through Photoshop or whatever means to actually put elements or the jersey on Jordan to do that. And to really give this kind of where the relevance in the hobby comes in, it appears that the person behind all this is a guy named Juan Garcia, who is the, until very recently, mainly anonymous person behind the social media accounts, Cardp, as we're calling it. So as apparently he started the foundation. I think he was seen taking the jersey to like the big authenticator, I think called My Gray. He had taken the photo to PSA to try to get authenticated. And so not a good look if you're the Cardp accounts. And so when the story broke, what really is not exactly a sign of innocence either is all their social media accounts were almost instantly deleted.
Yeah.
And I don't think have come back to this point. So that's the story, the basics of the story as we understand it. And again, we wanted to bring this up, but bring it up in a context that where we feel we could add value to the conversation and really kind of think about weaving in what it means from a hobby perspective. And given this is a basketball jersey, how it might fit into the hockey hobby. And so there's kind of three things that really interested me about this story from our perspective. And the first one is the whole notion of hobby watchdogs. And then does the story have legs, and what will any further investigation uncover? And then at what point does regulation start to happen with our industry? And so I want to start with the whole hobby watchdog concept, Troy, and we'll let you jump in here too. I think at the end of this, maybe a little bit down the road, there's a chance we collectively look back on the notion of an anonymous social media account being the watchdog for the hobby and realize that maybe how silly that notion is. Right. And not to throw us in this, but on a much smaller scale, Troy, we didn't start our brand and show under some alter egos or anonymous personas like Cheeto and the Big Turkey or something like that.
I like that. We should do that.
Welcome to the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. My name is Cheeto. I'm here with the Big Turkey. Right? Because for right or wrong, we wanted you guys, the listeners and watchers, to know that this show and what we say is really is a representation of us as people and the integrity that we've set out to in our efforts to try to entertain and inform the hobby with. So when you do what we do and like put our real names out there, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
If we do something really stupid or deceitful or dishonest or fraud in a way, we have no recourse. Our reputations are instantly gone and probably forever in the hobby. And when you do something like, when you do put your real self out there, that at the very minimum, it creates some level of accountability, right? Because I don't think either of us have any intention of trying to do anything bad from the hobby perspective. But we know, like I said, we know if we do that, we have nowhere to run. We have nowhere to hide, that the buck is going to stop with us. And so in this regard, Troy, I would love to see the hobby be more open and transparent in general. If you can't declare who you are and you're too afraid for whatever reason to say that, put your real self out there, maybe you shouldn't be the hobby watchdog, and maybe that should be an immediate red flag for anyone giving you their attention or consideration. I don't know. What do you think of my points?
I agree 100%. And I'll say when I first got back in the hobby and found this account, I actually liked what they were doing. But as it went on and listened more, the whole anonymous thing kind of was a drag on it. And it seems like at the end, it kind of blew up. But you think about it, you have Cardp on one end, the anonymous watchdog, but then you have people like, we'll say Sports Card Radio, right? They're on the other extreme. Their real names are out there. They're out there. They kind of are watchdogs, but they are the whole other way. They just go ham at anyone that they find out. And I would much rather have the one like Sports Card Radio, where they're out there, they're known, you know who they are, than the whole anonymous thing. I think the anonymous thing, I'm guessing the account started out with great intentions and just, I don't know, something happened and this kind of thing kind of blew up. But yeah,
or maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe not. You're 100% right. Maybe not. Maybe it was bad from the get-go. But I agree. The whole anonymous thing, I know why some people do it, but I think it just leads so much like wiggle room and trying to get out of things and looking sneaky sometimes.
Well, I think too, whether you're anonymous or not, declaring yourself the hobby watchdog, whatever
Yeah.
that means, or something similar to that, there's no like formal vetting process. There's no
Yeah.
application you have to fill out. There's no state license that you
Yeah.
have to get. So it doesn't mean that you're not as equally shady or deceitful or bad as the people that you're claiming to inform the hobby about. And so what is it saying, like those in glass houses, right? Something like that, where I
Those
don't
in
know.
glass house, yeah, shouldn't throw stones.
Right, and so it doesn't mean that anyone else that's doing this is bad by any stretch, but just because you claim to be a hobby watchdog does not make you um, on the up and up either,
Yeah.
right? So it's just again another reminder of that. My second kind of interesting point on this is that while Cardp was anonymous, it's not like that they were like not super anonymous where there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who knew about them because they were doing collaborations with everyone. They were opening cards with Ken Golden and Drake. They were doing what, like 96 Fleer basketball breaks that wasn't at like the national 2 times ago or something like that. And so there's a lot of associations
Yes.
that very prominent people have in the hobby with Card Pjorn. So if I was one of those people, I would be really hopeful that my house was pretty clean right now, because when reporters like start to dig and they find stuff, they don't just stop
No.
at the initial, and they're very good at what they do. And so I'm going to assume that there's going to be a lot of digging left. And if you have some things that probably aren't great that you've done, or you've, whether it's working with these people or not, that you might be in a little trouble. And I'm not throwing any accusations at anyone in particular because I have no reason to, but this is where I think the story might have legs.
This is the very interesting part. You say that because if you read Darren Rovell's tweets and you keep going down the line and kind of buried in there, this foundation or whatever sent him like a letter, or one of his associates a letter trying to justify all this stuff, and kind of came off bad. And Rovell actually said that they kind of poked the bear, and that's what led him to go totally in and researching and looking at this. And it's like, you better watch out who you with these reporters. They have pretty good sources and can dig in on stuff, like you said. So if you are associated with them, like you said, I'd make sure my house is clean too, because it seems like people are going to keep poking around. I haven't seen any updates on the story in the last couple of days, but you never know.
Did Ken Golden say anything? Do you know?
I don't know. You actually broke the story to me because I was at the Burbank Cards Show, and you're like, you see this stuff going on? And I was like, no. And I looked, and you told me to look at Rovell's Twitter account. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, I don't know enough about, I haven't really cared to dig that deep, but I would be interested, and I'm probably going to do this later on tonight, to go look at Ken Golden's response. Not that it would be an example of innocence or guilt or anything one way or the other. But I do recall when, with the whole like Fanatics and Panini stuff going down, like Ken doing like tons of live streams with Darren Rovell, I think, even, and other people, and being really Johnny on the spot with news. And maybe he's done it too in this case, but I don't feel like I've seen it. And I wonder if he's been a little bit of crickets on that, and it just, get right, wrong, fair or not, it kind of leads you to scratch your head a little bit and be like, huh, that's interesting that you've gone a little bit quiet. And so, yeah, you better hope, if you've had association with Card Pjorn, that your house is very much in order. And then the last thing is where it really stands out to me in this story is, I think, the need for some sort of regulation in the hobby, either by the government or maybe the hobby itself. Troy, there's so much shady stuff that happens that it's kind of, frankly, maybe a reason for a lot of people not to get involved in the hobby in the first place. Like if you were thinking about getting into sports collectibles, hockey cards or whatever, and you see a story like this, it's not like going to make you more confident to spend money in the hobby. And of course, 99% of the people in our hobby are phenomenal. It's the few bad apples that all put us at risk, whether it's fake cards or fake patches, fake autos. This issue, like the Jordan jersey or any other example we could mention, all work in concert to erode the trust of collectors and potential collectors, which is, I think, a big threat to the hobby. And so without regulation, and given the cash that's transacted, the sports cards hobby is kind of like the Wild West. It's a free for all for both good and bad actors, I think. And you have to wonder, when's it going to reach the point where safeguards are put in place, and can the hobby reach its potential until that happens? So this would be like companies like Upper Deck or Fanatics creating a library of their patches.
Yeah.
Right. As a way to say, we can't risk people swapping these out and selling them as fakes, because that erodes the confidence of collectors, which is bad for everybody down the road. And so we're going to take the responsibility and spend the time and effort and money to build a safeguard for collectors in our hobby. And I just feel like, Troy, that when you have big stories like this, that there's people at probably the federal law enforcement level that are going to start to get interested and start to dig in. And soon you have the Department of Justice investigating all the crazy stuff that happens in the hobby. And maybe that's what needs to happen for the regulation to come. What are your thoughts on regulation?
So I would say this. The FBI, Department of Justice, are already involved. They've done busts in the past with fake memorabilia and all that stuff. I think to truly have a regulation, I don't know if it's the government. I think it would be more, like you said, the companies are going to have to get together and figure some kind of governing system out. If the confidence gets so eroded by all this fake stuff and whatever news stories come out on fraud and stuff like that, I think that's where the companies kind of have to step in. I always look at video games with the ESRB, which is kind of a funded regulation.
Yeah, I was when you said that, I was thinking of the movie rating, the whatever board, which is association that was formed by the movie companies because the government was going to shut down the ability. And they said, hey, you either figure this out, and maybe the hobby needs like an association like that where they all agree that these are the standards.
I would go. Yep. That's where I would lean towards, because if you don't eventually, and I've always said this on our show, I think the EU would jump in way before the US government on some of this stuff, because they seem a lot more aggressive on some of this stuff, like with the breaking and gambling and how you want to call it that. But yeah, I think that it would behoove these companies to get together and try to figure something out, because the more this happens, just the more eyeballs that are going to get on it.
Yeah, it gets scary to buy stuff.
I literally really don't buy patches anymore unless I'm pretty 100% confident. If I'm 99%, I won't buy them. I've seen too many people get burned or fake patches and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's the best that we can offer to, 'cause again, it's like, I never want to try to regurgitate information. No. It's like, where can we try to add value to the conversation? If you are interested, though, in learning more and more about the details and the facts or alleged facts in this case, there are a couple great podcasts that have some good perspectives that I did listen to this week. First of all, Adam Gray did an episode on this issue on his podcast, the Basketball Podcast or Basketball Card Podcast. Sorry, maybe wrote it down wrong, but you can search for it and find it. And then Cardboard Coach with Coach Co. He had a great conversation with the guy, Epheus Pitch. I think his name is Bill. And that's probably worth listening to as well. Okay, next story, Troy, is SGC has lowered their prices big time.
Yep.
They made some pretty big announcements today. So we're recording this on Wednesday. First thing is that they have an app that you can download for both Apple and Android. They're touting a smoother submission process, easy certification and pop report lookup, ability to download high-res images of cards, etc. I don't know how big of a deal this is going to be. If you're an SGC power submitter, it could be a handy feature. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
The big news, though, was that they pretty dramatically reduce their pricing, and they say that they're doing it on a permanent basis, and made some other pricing moves that I'm pretty in favor of. So starting today, I believe all sports cards with a 10 to 15 day turnaround will you can be graded through SGC for $15 US. That's pretty fast, Troy, for $15, 10 to 15 days. Now, was there some clarification that you found? Is it only on cards 2000 or after, or is it every card?
So in the announcement, he's the guy that says the announcement, he says it's $15, no upcharges on post. I want to say he said post $2,000 cards. What I don't understand, and maybe someone can tell me, they're trying to say no upcharges based on value, but I look right here on their website and I see declared value, and that $15 I only see on the less than 1,500. So something's not jiving with me, because 3,500 says 85, and then just a bunch of hyphens for the
Which
rest.
Would be 85.
Yeah. So maybe I didn't know if they didn't update the website enough, or there's still some more clarification. Obviously, a lot of the cards are below 1,500, but
yeah,
that's one question I would have to try to get clarification on.
What's even better, though, than just $15 for 10 to 15 day turnaround is that there's no upcharges that, according to them, based on value, which we have that little disagreement, and then also no additional fee for grading pack pulled autos.
Yeah,
and there's also no minimum quantity. So a lot of, like, when PSA gets down to $15, you have to submit 20 cards, 25 cards, something like that.
Don't ask me.
So this is like one.
Yeah.
You can get this rate on just submitting one card.
Yeah.
What's even crazier to me, though, Troy, is that they've lowered their quote unquote immediate service, which has a 1 to 2 day turnaround, to only $40 a card.
That's bonkers.
That is exciting and amazing. And so, looking at the big picture of this, to me, it's a sign that they must feel that they're operationally ready, have their processes in place, their costs low enough where that they can make a big push to grab market share. Because it's definitely a market share push. And I'm sure that they've tested the waters, because they've done these deals with Topps, like for $9 a card on specific Bowman Chrome releases, or Topps Chrome.
It's literally right here. Topps Chrome special, $9.
So probably those promotions have helped them smooth out their processes and understand that they can efficiently do this at a much lower rate. As of right now, though, I mean, the big issue with SGC is that their secondary market values lag behind PSA quite a bit. So making it really easy, fast, and cheap to grade at them should, you would assume, get more people grading, get more slabs into the market, and maybe give collectors more confidence in their value. Because the one thing SGC has going forward is a lot of respect.
Yep.
That comes from vintage grading. So people generally regard them as good graders. Now, I know that their slabs which is a very subjective thing.
Yep.
Some people love them, some people don't, but what can you do?
I will say, too, on this, you see these fees and everything. Remember, there's still shipping fees involved. So don't forget that when you ship. I can't remember if here, I can look, actually. So they charge, I think when you send it, you got to pay shipping. And then I don't know if do they get you on the back end, too?
I think every grading card company does.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is like only them, but just remember that you got to add that into your price of doing business. So the top dog in grading, of course, is PSA. And to compare these moves by SGC, at PSA's lowest level is $25 for a non-auto card and $35 for an auto card. And I believe that has a 65-day turnaround. So this is $10 less, but really 40% less. Yeah. And 10 to 15-day turnaround versus 65-day turnaround. And also on the lowest level, service level for PSA, it's a maximum of $499 value. Where I think at the bare minimum, we're saying SGC is $1,500. Like I said, if the card is autoed, it goes to $35, and then the turnaround goes to 75 days. Now, PSA's 3-day turnaround service, which is not 1 to 2 days, even a day longer than the 1 to 2 day quote unquote immediate service through SGC for $40, is $300 for non-auto cards and $390 for auto cards, and cards must have a declared value of $4,999 or less. So from that perspective, there's no comparison in
price and speed. Now, to me, the big reason to bring all this up is, given that we're on the heels of Series 1 coming out in a month and a half or so, it could be a very interesting play with this, even with the current discrepancy in values between SGC and PSA. Troy, we talk all the time that when sets come out, especially flagship releases, that speed wins and wins big time.
Yeah.
So let's just forward past Series 1 for a second, go to Series 2. If you pull a Connor Bedard Young Guns the day that comes out and you insta ship it to SGC for $40 and have a 1 to 2 business day turnaround, you could ostensibly have a graded Bedard card on the secondary markets in a very, very short amount of time, versus having to pay $300 to get that approximate turnaround with PSA. So even though the value is going to be less with an SGC 10, of course, than a PSA 10, it makes you think what the difference could be in profit. Like, you might actually be able to make more money or get that sale quicker, because not only is it the ultimate difference between PSA and SGC, we know when these sets first come out that the cards go for a much higher premium right away than they do. It'll be worth, card A is worth more today than it will be 2 weeks from now. So you might be able to make just as much money doing it that way. So that, to me, Troy, was the most interesting part of this whole, from a hockey card collector's perspective, this whole move, in that it might help you get some very, cards from releases almost instantly in the market if you're looking to flip them.
Personally, I'm not a big grader. I've said that 100 times. I still think if I got the Bedard, I'm going to PSA and getting my 3-day. I think you'll get more value from the PSA 10. I still, even though it's quick,
even paying the $300.
I think so. Just, we've seen prices, right, of SGC and PSA and the difference. I don't know. Getting it out there first will help. I think a PSA 10 would still sell for more, even if it sold a day later than the first SGC 10.
Really? Huh. All right. Well, we might have to test this out. Wouldn't that be an interesting test? We'd probably lose all our money, but yeah. So we'll see what happens. And now the other interesting thing too is what will Becca do? What will PSA do? Will they try to respond to this, or are they going to wait and see what happens? That'll be interesting to follow there.
Yep.
All right. New product releases. So believe it or not, Troy, I think the biggest news in new product releases today is that nothing's coming out this week. Which is kind of news, because we've had stuff come out we've had EPAC releases and regular releases almost every week. So it's not a bad thing, in my opinion. I think we've all needed, and the hobbies needed, to collectively catch its breath a little bit. We do know, though, that next week we have a big release coming out in Ultimate Collection. It's due out on the 13th, which would be next Wednesday. And Troy, the more that this sits with me, the more I think I'm digging Ultimate Collection, even though typically I'm pretty resistant to one-pack boxes with only a few cards that cost a lot of money. It's $150, which is the David Adams pre-sale pricing in the US. But you essentially get 4 cards. So you're looking at like $37.50 a card, which of course is a lot. And what I think is attracting me to Ultimate is the fact that you can hit really huge cards in this set. Like, this is one of the sets that's produced some of the big ones. We'll think of, again, we've referenced a lot, the McDavid 101 Shield, that golden, that's currently over $100,000. I don't think there's a $100,000 card in Black Diamond or Stature. Who knows with Connor Bedard? That seems to change everything. But so I kind of look at a box like this as a lottery ticket, right? Where pull tabs, right? Where $150 isn't too much to put down, but you're kind of taking a chance at hitting a really big card, knowing that there's also probably a better chance you're going to get crushed. But I don't know so now that we've been we reviewed the checklist, we've known for a week or so that this is the next release. How's it kind of marinating with you?
I think it's a good one box purchase for me personally, but that's about it.
Just to throw your hat in the ring.
It's
a good breaking product.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's a lottery ticket, like you said.
And then if you think about, well, what other sets could come out yet this month is, I think the two candidates would be 2021-22 Premier, which is another big high-end set. And then 2022-23 SPX are the other September release candidates. So for once, not a ton going on in new product releases. All right, Troy, it's time for our PWCC Weekly Hockey Preview. PWCC, of course, is a Gongshow partner and sponsor. Thank them very, very much for supporting our show and continuing to do so. A reminder that the September PWCC Premier Auction begins today, Thursday, 7th of September. So be sure to head to pwccmarketplace.com to check it out. They don't do a preview, so as we're recording this the day before, we don't even know what hockey cards are in there. So I guess it'll all be a mystery that we'll solve together, Troy.
Nice.
Tomorrow. But today for you. Weird, again, the weird space-time continuum we live in recording the show. So after the Burbank Card Show and Labor Day weekend hiatus, Troy, the band's getting back together as Jeremy Lee and I will resume our weekly hockey auction watch party on Jeremy's YouTube channel, Sports Cards Live, starting this Sunday at 8:30 Central. We weren't even separated long enough to do it behind the music. The band got back together.
Nice.
It's a great time. You learn a lot from Jeremy, and I make dumb comments along the way. We always have great audience participation, interaction. So again, like I said, hope you all can make it. But speaking, Troy, of the weekly auction, it is our Thursday show, and each week we pick out our favorite vintage and modern cards to highlight, learn about, and we'll start, as we always do, with our vintage favorites. So it's funny, as you were going through Milt Schmidt, I thought a lot about the research I did for this card, a 1957 Parkhurst Jean Beliveau PSA 8, which is a PSA A, meaning that they put it in the top 30% of the PSA 8s that they've looked at. PWCC eye appeal rating. So Troy, there's 26 PSA 8s, and one graded higher. There's one PSA 9 of the 1957 Parkhurst Jean Beliveau, so pretty scarce card. It's not his rookie. His rookie is the 1953 Parker set, so he's fourth card in or something like that.
Yep.
And I think we've talked about Beliveau a few times, but I don't know. This card stood out to me. I don't know. These are my weird associations that I make, but there's something about this card that reminds me of 1950s black and white movies, or Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. It just fits the era, the design of the card. Or maybe it's emblematic of the era, and I love cards that do this. It's one of the reasons why I love 1971 OPG, and there's some of the 80s sets as well. Just maybe a little bit of a Norman Rockwell that these early 50s Parker sets kind of had as well. So Beliveau played for parts of 20 seasons with the Montreal Canadiens from 1950 to 1971. I'm just going to jump to the punchline on his. If you're not aware, he has 17 Stanley Cup championships.
Yep.
How many does Connor McDavid have?
None.
Jean Beliveau has 17. He has 10 as a player, which is amazing. It's at 10 as a player, and then 7 as an executive. So total is 17. He did score 507 career goals, added 712 assists for 1,219 points in 1,125 career games, so was more than a point per game guy. Was a first-team All-Star 6 times, played in the All-Star game 13 times, 2-time Hart Memorial Trophy winner, Art Ross and Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Hall of Famer, named to the list of the 100 greatest players in NHL history in 2017. The card, if you're listening to us, I would say is kind of a classic design. Beliveau skating up the ice. He's against a white background. There's the Canadiens logo in the upper right corner, and then a block of text at the bottom that has his name, his number 3, and his center position. So, Troy, I did mention that the PSA 8s were pretty rare for 1957 Parkhurst. Last sale was in June of 2020. So, 3 years ago. 1,225 US. All-time high was 1,554 in May of 2015. You got a current bid?
$725 US.
All right. You got the next one.
I do. All right. We are going to look at a 1924 C144 Champs Hockey Alex Connell PSA 7. It's not stated in the title or the description on PWCC site, but this is a rookie card. When you look at the rookie designations in TCDB, they have this listed as a rookie.
Do you know what like the C's stand for? Like C56, C55?
I always want to
C1?
say cigarette, but I don't know. I don't know what it means.
Okay.
And it's funny because I don't think we've ever had a 1924 champs card on our weekly hockey previews. But this card's really cool. If you're on the video, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. I think I'm going to do this. I want to start with the set, then look at the card, and end with a little about Alex Connell. So this is a 1924 C144 Champs hockey card. The set was produced by Tobacco Products Corporation of Canada and inserted into packs of Champs cigarettes during the 24-25 season. The set has 60 cards. They're tiny, measuring 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And each card is sepia colored. So I don't even know how you describe that. It's like blackish.
That's like
whitish.
old photo. No, it's browns. It's like the old photographs where it's instead of black and white, it's almost like brown and cream.
Yeah, it's a sepia card. Front features a portrait description of the player with a blank border and his name in black type at the bottom edge. You can see that as I read it if you're watching on YouTube. So there's a brief biography of the player in English that appears on the back of the card. The cards are unnumbered. There are some key players in this set. There's King Clancy. I don't know how to say his name. Oriel Joliat. Yeah. Maybe. Howie Morenz and George Vesna. So a couple guys we've talked about before. In addition, lots of rookie cards. And Josh, we all know the hype that surrounds the Pro Set Stanley Cup hologram card, right? People go crazy for that card. Yeah. We have a friend that's been trying to open up packs of Pro Set and get it, or boxes. I don't know if he's got it yet.
Shout out to Phil.
Yep, shout out to Phil. Well, guess what, baby? This set has a Stanley Cup pictured card as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing it right now. There it is. Look how small the Stanley Cup was back then. I think it's fantastic.
Wow.
This card goes for good money too. So it looks great though. I love the little Stanley Cup card. And okay, so that's our brief rundown on the set. So now let's go back and look at the card itself. And again, it's a PSA 7. It should be a very good copy. However, as always, look at the card yourself. Go on PWC's website if you're interested in it. Zoom in. But to me, what stands out about this card, and if you're watching on YouTube, for how old it is, the edges look absolutely fantastic. The corners look really nice. Like really, wow. Really nice. A little bit of rounding at the bottom, but those top corners, I'm trying to move around and I'm failing miserably on YouTube, but like these top corners look really good. The edges all around look really nice. So just really looks like a nice card. Card is slightly off center, left to right. You can see if you're watching on YouTube. And there's some discoloration around the bottom of the card that if you zoom in really close, I think that is some discoloration. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like there's something going on there. So just be aware of that if you're looking at this card. Picture looks really good on the front. Got that sepia color, which I just like how it looks. It's not your typical hockey card. You don't see like these sepia cards a lot. All right, overall, for the age of this card, I think it looks really, really nice. Now, a little bit about Alex Connell, because I knew absolutely zero about him. Hall of Famer, 2-time Stanley Cup winner. His regular season stats, he was a goalie, Josh. 418 games played, 193 wins, 156 losses, 68 ties. Here we go. 1.92 goals against average, 81 shutouts. Played for the Ottawa Senators, Detroit Falcons, New York Americans, and the Montreal Maroons during his NHL. He is considered one of the greatest NHL goalies ever.
You think he's still available for the Oilers, Troy?
Oh, shots fired. Shots fired. I would have taken him over Dubnyk. Yeah. But he holds the NHL record for longest shutout streak of 460 minutes, 49 seconds. This was 7 straight games with a shutout, and then finally getting scored on in the 8th game. In fact, Alex Connell has the 6th most shutouts for a career in NHL history with 81, tied with the Dominator and Tiny Thompson. I love that name. Also, Connell is the only goalie in league history to have 2 seasons of 15 or more shutouts. And finally, Connell has the lowest career goals against average in NHL history at 1.92.
You know what's interesting about that? So I don't know if it was last show or last week. I think you were talking about a goalie and his like goals against average was like 4 something.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, well, that's not really great in the context of today's NHL, but maybe during that time, like a lot more.
Yeah,
goals
it's
were
all
scored.
eras, right? Like it's so
Yeah,
hard.
and so to see this guy at 1.92 is kind of flies in the face of that theory that I had when I don't remember who the goalie was we were talking about last week, but
so I had to throw in a fun fact. Check this out. Could you imagine this happening in an NHL game today? During the 1928, not just a game, Stanley Cup Finals between the Montreal Maroons and the New York Rangers, where Connell was a spectator. He was in the stands. Rangers goalie Lauren, is it Chabot? C-H-A-B-O-T.
Chabot
was injured. And New York coach Lester Patrick petitioned for Connell to take his place in net from the stands. The Montreal coach absolutely refused, and Patrick took the net himself for one of the most famous incidents in league history. So you can't get the guy from the stand to play goalie. So now the coach is going to go play goalie. I just love that.
Prepare for your mind to be blown in about 3 minutes. I'm just going to say that.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. Look who you got. I see who's coming up. This card, being a PSA 7, has a pop count of 6 with only 1 graded higher. Last sale of PSA 7 I can find was on April 25th of 2021 for $2,325 US dollars via PWCC. This was, in fact, the last sale of any graded copy of this card as well. Current bid, $800 US dollars. And I didn't lie. I had to check real quick because I did these this morning, but it's still $800 US dollars.
Well, Troy, speaking of Lester Patrick,
let's do it.
The second vintage card that I picked out was a 1910 C56 hockey Lester Patrick, which is rookie, a PSA 1, which is a poor condition card. This week, I'm actually doing a tobacco card overview. That's usually your Ballywick, but I'm jumping in the fray here. This one stood out to me mainly because of my familiarity with the Lester Patrick Trophy and my desire to learn more about guys and players that these awards were named after. So first, we'll start with the Lester Patrick Trophy. It's presented by the NHL and USA Hockey to honor a recipient's contribution to ice hockey in the United States. So it's considered a non-NHL trophy because it might be awarded to players, coaches, officials, or other people outside the NHL. This whole report is going to blow your mind, Troy. So
I just saw what we're going to get to. This is craziness. This is we didn't even plan this. We did not plan this.
No. The last winner of the Lester Patrick Trophy was none other than a goalie coach. There's hope for you, Troy. Maybe you will win the Lester Patrick Trophy someday. So Warren Strelo was the goalie coach for Team USA during the 1980 Olympic Games. He won the trophy last.
Yep, I know all
now, you've
about
accomplished
him.
a lot as a goalie coach, but I'd probably put him a little bit ahead of you.
All the stuff's named after Warren Strelo. Like I think the Warren Strelo Goaltending Award. There's a camp. Yeah, he's a legend.
The last player to win the last player to win the Lester Patrick Trophy was Mark Howe in 2016. So, Troy, Lester Patrick was a Canadian professional hockey player, of course, and coach who lived from 1883 till June 1960. He was a defenseman whose playing career basically lasted from 1903 to 1926. He won the Stanley Cup 2 times as a player in 1906 and 07, and as a coach / general manager and owner, I guess, he won 4 times in 1925, 28, 33, and 40. So Lester and his brother Frank created 22 rules, Troy, that are still used today in the NHL and still in the rule book. So listen to this. They created the blue line.
Okay.
Kind of a big deal.
Important.
The forward pass. Be a weird game without that. The playoff system that's still used by the NHL. They were the guys that added numbers to jerseys.
What?
That came up with the idea to make the players be able to stand out from each other a little bit better. They invented the rule allowing the puck to be kicked anywhere with the exception of the goal.
Okay.
Now, here's the big one for you. Lester and his brother Frank came up with a rule allowing goaltenders to fall down or go on the ground when making a save.
There you
Right,
go.
Lester Patrick.
The one we talked about where they couldn't. It was illegal for them to go on the ice.
They were the first people to credit assists on scored goals.
Okay.
They kind of came up with the whole concept of an assist. You're welcome, Mitch Marner. And they invented the penalty shot.
Wow.
Not bad.
Cool. No, that's not bad.
Okay, so now you've stolen all my thunder. I have this incredible story about the 1928 season when Lester Patrick was, and I have a little bit more context. So
you have more. Yours is a little bit better, I think.
Was the head coach and GM of the New York Rangers. This is from Wikipedia. So there's a famous incident. It was on April 7th, 1928, Game 2 of the 1928 Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Maroons. So after starting goaltender, as you mentioned, Lauren Chabot, he suffered an eye injury. He was hit by the puck in the face because they didn't wear face masks or helmets. In the middle of the second period, Patrick inserted himself into the game as the Rangers' new netminder. Now, remember, so when you talked about who is your Connell, who his rookie was 1924. This is Lester Patrick started playing in 1903.
Yeah.
Right. So he's a little bit older at this time. And so he goes in the game and he tells his team, because he was the coach, he's like, don't let an old man down. So he's 44 years old in 99 days when he went in the net. Patrick remains the oldest man to have played in a Stanley Cup Finals.
And he wasn't even a goalie, right? He wasn't a goalie. Coach. No, I know. He didn't play goalie, though, when he was a player. Yeah, that's crazy.
So at the time, it was not common for teams to have a backup goaltender. And as you mentioned, the Montreal Maroons coach, Eddie Girard, refused to give permission to Alex Connell, who was with the Ottawa Senators at the time, who was in the stands watching the game. There's also a minor league goalie, Hugh McCormick, in the stands as well, and he refused to let him play too. So then another coach, Odie Cleghorn or something like that, stands in for Patrick to coach the Rangers, and Patrick goes in a goalie for one game in the Stanley Cup Finals and stops 18 and 19 shots, allowing one goal and helping the Rangers to an overtime victory.
I love this. I love this so much. Can you imagine Bruce Boudreau going in net? Bruce is just like, I've had it. I got to get in net. We don't have any goalies.
Oh. So Lester Patrick was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 1947. Now, the card itself is a PSA 1, Troy. It's pretty beat up. The upper left corner has kind of a chunk missing out of it. But to some degree, though, with these 100-plus-year-old cards, it kind of, to me, it has a little charm almost in a way. It kind of should be beat up, right? Mm-hmm. It's a really old, and it's not going to cost you a fortune like a really high-grade would. So the last sale for 1910 C56 Lester Patrick PSA 1 was $128 US back in March of 2017. So that was a while ago. Now, PSA 1.5 just sold this past March for $1,200. So I don't know how much this will go for at the end of the day, but you got a current bid.
$230 US, but I'm going to tell you that's not going to hold because I'm going to bid on this sucker.
God, what an amazing story, huh?
Yeah, I love the story. I love the card is not. Hey, if you're far enough back, it looks really nice, actually. I mean, I know there's kind of a chunk missing of the blue and everything, but in my budget, this looks fantastic.
Okay, we got to switch to modern. So the first card that we're going to highlight is a 2009 Exquisite Collection Mario Lemieux 03 Flashback Rookie Patch Auto out of 25 BGS 910. So I know that Grant Sandground actually a couple shows ago now mentioned that he'd love to see Upper Deck pull back on including these types of cards, and I think specifically mentioned this one in new product releases that they've kind of been using a little bit over and over again. But I'm not going to throw shade at this one because this is kind of one of the OG examples. I really love this card, but I admit it's kind of a weird card because it's a flashback rookie. We don't see these super often. It's not a rookie, but it's not a rookie either, of course. It's kind of confusing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like a tribute where it even has rookie on it, but it's of course 2009 and Mario Lemieux's rookie was 85. So yeah. So it does take a little bit to get your head wrapped around it again, but it is that '03 classic RPA design from Exquisite that was made very, very famous from LeBron James rookie year. And so it's sort of an homage, I think, to that. Um, they're pretty rare. It's out of 25. They go up for sale maybe once or twice a year for the Lemieux. So if it's a card that you think that you're into and you have the budget, this is probably one to take a look at, because again, you might not see it for a couple of years, or it might be 6 months or 10 months, something like that, down the road. It kind of reminds me too of how I sort of like wrap my head around this ultimately. Is it maybe sort of, or I think that it's a little bit comparative to like the all-time Future Watch autos,
Hmm.
but those don't say rookie on them. The weird part about this is it does say
Yeah.
rookie on them.
It says rookie in the year. I know it's saying 2009-10 Exquisite Collection. It's the year of the card. But still, I see rookie and it just, my mind warps a little bit. But hey, I ain't turning this card down if I got a good deal on it.
It's a cool looking card.
Great looking card.
Actually, the last sale for one of these was this exact card, which sold for $8,250 US this past April 10th. And for a little bit of context too, in this set there was a Wayne Gretzky, and I think in 2021 a BGS 9 10, so the same grade as this one, sold for 56,000 US. So these are cards that, although they're kind of a little bit interesting and you have to sort of wrap your head around the whole rookie flashback thing, they go for big money. You got a current bid on it?
$1,150 US.
So are you kind of like me, like a little, I don't know if confused is the right word, but just not really sure how to, like would I ever spend a lot of money on a card like this?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, if I could get a good deal on it, I probably would, because I love Lemieux's autograph. I think it's one of the best ones ever, but it's still a little bit to wrap my head around it. I do love the picture in the old school Penguins.
When you look at Lemieux's auto, though, is there anything that you see that would lead, like, if you covered up his name and you would say, "What is this guy's name?" I've never seen anything that's even approximates the name like Mario Lemieux.
Yeah, I think one time I tried to figure it out and I don't know, but it's so nice. It's just, you can tell it flows. It looks really nice.
It looks like Oli Lefsa. All right, you got the next one.
All right, I do. Here we go. All right, I got a 1996 Be a Player. So I think it was it Pinnacle? I can't remember. I think I get to it. Be a Player, Link to History, Peter Forsberg auto, DNA 8.
Okay.
Just don't worry. I'll get into it. So I'm looking at this 1996 Be a Player, Link to History, Peter Forsberg card for a couple of reasons. We never look at Be a Player cards. I think we've mentioned them maybe once or twice on the show.
Yeah.
And when I saw the name of it, Link to History, I just thought, hey, that's kind of interesting. Kind of caught my eye, a little intrigue. But when I first saw this card and read the description, I will fully admit it said in the title that it was BAP, Link to History. And I was like, what is this, BAP? What's a BAP card? And then 5 seconds later, I realized how dumb I was. And Be a Player.
Yeah.
They just had to shorten it down because I don't think Be a Player would have fit. So Troy was dumb for a second, but I figured it out. So again, I'm going to do the same thing I did with my last card. I kind of got the set, the card, and then little facts about Peter Forsberg. So this card, obviously, 1996, Be a Player set. This was a 220 card set issued by Pinnacle in 2 series and was distributed in 8 card packs. For the first time, the series was actually licensed by the NHL as well as the NHLPA in this release. And thus the players were allowed to be seen in their own uniforms, not the generic junk that we don't like to see. This card is specifically a Link to History autograph insert card. So there were just standard Link to History cards, didn't have an auto. But however, this one that is up for sale is an auto. Card has an auto on it. You can kind of see it. It's a little hidden, but if you zoom in, you see it. It's on gold foil on the card front. The exact odds per pack were not released, but they're significantly tougher to pull than the non-autograph cards, obviously. I
don't think there was a lot of like pack pulled autographs
at
that time either.
No, not at all. Now, and here's one I didn't even realize this. There's also, there's a silver parallel version of this autograph card also that was created. So you can see that has that silver background. Again, there's the auto. This is die cut. I didn't realize that until I looked at it a little closer, but that's a die cut on the bottom right. But you can see like this one's got the gold and a little white, or I don't know what you call off-white. But there is a silver parallel too. Now those were 1 out of every 30 packs for the silver. That's what those are inserted at. So again, link to history auto, Peter Forsberg, not the silver parallel. That's the card that's up for bid. So looking at the card itself, PSA 8. Here's where it's just kind of weird to me. So the autograph got graded an 8, and the card they just did authentic. So I was trying to wrap my head around. I don't think that's a rare, like we don't see a lot of people do that, right? Get the auto graded and just do an authentic card.
No, we're seeing that more and more because it's weird with PSA. The auto seems to be the more important thing, and especially if the card is like super rare, like on a 1/1 or like out of 10. Though, we just on today our Instagram, we did a Kaprizov 1/1 first public sale from Canvas that has a gold ink auto. Same thing. The card was given an authentic grade for PSA and an auto grade of 10.
Okay, well, that makes sense. All right. So, I mean, the card looks good. The front looks nice. Top left corner has some slight rounding. And now the edges look pretty good. I'm guessing when the person zoomed or looked at the card close enough, they were like, well, it's not going to get a 10 on the card grade. So I'll just authenticate the card and then get the auto graded, which, hey, to each their own. Auto looks good. If you zoom in, you can see a couple spots where the pen might have came up a little. But again, it's Peter Forsberg. It's a sweet card. It's a be a player set, one you don't see very often. I think it looks fantastic. I like the picture on the front, just a different picture than we usually see. And Forsberg himself, all-time great, Hall of Famer, 2-time Cup winner, Calder winner, 1-time Art Ross, 1-time Hart Trophy, named to the top 100 players in NHL history. Over his career, Forsberg had 249 goals, 636 assists for 885 points in 708 games played. Kind of an assist machine, Josh.
Yeah.
So the best comp I could find for this card, and Josh, you beat me to it. I swear this was not planned. I found the exact same card that sold previously. Same slab number and all, sold on April 25th of this year via eBay for $27.66 US. Congratulations to that person, because I'm assuming they're the ones selling it. Current bid is now $46 US. So good on them.
Can I make a comment here, though? So if anyone's still seething at us for our buy this guy for love and not for money, how in God's green earth is a 1996 pack pulled on-card auto for Peter Forsberg, who was named one of the 100 greatest players in NHL history, $28?
Yep. And now this one's 46, which is still low.
What am I missing here? I mean, were there like 49 million of autograph cards?
Yeah, maybe there's a ton of these. I don't know.
Wow. That blows my mind. Okay. All right, Troy, last card in our modern highlight is a 2019-20 SP Authentic Jack Hughes Future Watch Auto out of 999 Raw. It is like with every Raw card in PWCC authenticated by Mike Baker Authentication. So you know it's legit. Hughes is, of course, just 22 years old, coming off 43 goal, 99-point season in his 4th year. He's also on a great young team that has aspirations of chasing the cup this upcoming season. We've talked often about how the Future Watch Auto is, at least today, one of the 3 most important cards for any player. So a Young Guns, Future Watch Auto, and Cup RP, True RPA. And given his performance last year, I think a lot of people are continuing to jump on the Hughes bandwagon, thinking he's 22. He just had 99 points. I don't know. He might have a couple notches left to amp up his game and really become an elite scorer in the NHL. I picked this one because it's one of those litmus test cards where here we're getting into September. We're starting our 2023-24 previews. Jack Hughes is one of those shortlist guys that seems like people are really buying into at this point. And so I'm just curious to see what a card like this goes for. I mean, I think he didn't invent the blue line or anything like that. So don't have an amazing story like that to tell. Last raw sale for 2019-20 SP Authentic Jack Hughes Future Watch Auto at a $9.99 was $775 US on September 3rd. A year ago, raw sales on this card were going for like the 600 range. So they're up, what is that, up 20% or 25% maybe in the past year. PSA 10s go for double, so around 1,500 US. There's been 42 sales of a Jack Hughes Future Watch Autos year to date and more than 122 all time. So it's a card that's traded pretty frequently. Do you got a current bid, Troy?
$155 US.
So these 6 were just our favorites from both vintage and modern, but there's lots of other cards to bid on this week. So be sure to go to PWCC before the auction ends this Sunday and check out the cards and place your bids. All right, Troy, we're going to end again with personal pickups.
All right, let's do it.
What do you got?
I have nothing. Nothing. I saved my money for boxes.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to keep the streak alive. So I did make an eBay purchase the other day. Nothing huge, but I'm really digging these 2021-22 Fleer Ultra medallions, especially the Platinum Medallion at 100. I picked up this Jack Hughes. And I promise you, I'm not trying to like outfox the fox because these aren't really that expensive. But I'm just trying to be less of the investy type person and more collect what I love. I'm trying to buy for love and not for money. So this Jack Hughes Platinum Medallion out of 100 from eBay, but really from ComC, because remember 2021-22 Fleer Ultra was an ePack exclusive release. Yep. And I do though think that these cards have a couple things going for them over the long haul. There is a legacy of Platinum Medallion. It had gone away, or Fleer Ultra medallions that had gone away. Now it came back. So for a guy like Jack Hughes, or I think I have a Cale Makar here too, would be their first medallions. I think the Platinum just look really nice. Because now there's a million parallels. So like if you say, well, what's going against this? And there's a lot of shorter print run parallels too. There's out of 75, there's out of 50, there's out of 25, there's out of 10. I don't know. And then I think there might be a 101 or something like that, or out of 5. So I'm not saying that these are like huge, super great investments or anything like that, but I really like the look of it. It's got kind of like that rainbow foil kind of sheen to it. And they're pretty affordable because there are so many other parallels. So yeah, I just liked it.
It's a really good picture too. I know we get on ComC for some of their scans, but this is a good picture.
Well, I like the fact he's in that kind of that retro uniform as well. So the streak is alive. Well, Troy, that's our show for today. If you like the episode, please leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast app you listen to us on. If you love the show, you want to support us, want to chat with us on the Hockey Cards Gongshow Discord server, please consider a $5 a month donation. Join our $1.99 support level tier on Patreon. The link is in the show description and the podcast app you're listening to us on, or on YouTube if you're watching us there. You can get a link on our website, hockeycardsgongshow.com. Just click on the Become a Patron link. You can go to the Patreon website directly, patreon.com, and search for Hockey Cards Gongshow. Also, Troy, we are on social media. I'm not sure if you knew that. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. And Troy, the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a production of Dollar Box Ventures, LLC. Have an awesome start to the week. Rest in peace, Brad Maxwell.
Oh, yeah. Former North Star.
Great. And we'll see you all on Monday.